I don't like about my current job? What are some skills and some attributes that I have that aren't really being utilized in the current role? And then, even if I make the job or make the change, what are some potential training or other educational things that I need to put into my portfolio, my little package, so that makes me more marketable? So taking that purposeful approach of where am I at now? What are my needs? What are my values? And where do I want to see myself in the next 2 to 5 years? That helped me make a better decision. So that's where we do that internal work of what are some of your strong skills? My approach is very strengths-based. I don't believe in making a change and then struggling, because that's when you'll look back and you'll think that you've made the wrong decision. But looking at what your strengths are. So for the example of what you're mentioning about the teacher, so I start with the values that are their top values that they have. Out of those, what are the top 3 to 5 values that they cannot compromise no matter what? Looking at that, then checking in with their current work and how those values are being met or not met, and then what that role could look like in the future. The second one is their strengths. So really, doing an inventory of what their strengths are. Some of them, it's funny because people only recognize them in the conversations that we're having.
Welcome to Design for More, the podcast where we unlock the secrets to healing, empowerment, and transformation. I'm your host, Angie, and today we have a special guest who's going to take us on a journey of growth, insight, and inspiration. But before we dive in, don't forget to hit that follow button on Spotify, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow along on your socials, because you won't want to miss the transformative conversations that we have lined up. All right, let's get started. I have today a very dear friend of mine, Jyoti. Welcome to Design for More. We're so excited to have you here.
Thank you, Angie. Glad to be here.
So Jyoti and I have known each other for, I think, almost 15 years. And she is now she's doing a lot of different things, but she is an amazing career coach. So why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
For sure, Angie. So I'm an ICF certified coach. Prior to that, I worked in both private and public sectors. I also have my MBA, and I've made many, many, many career changes throughout the last 16 to 18 years. So using all of that and seeing what women around my age and in similar experiences have been going through, I've been focusing on coaching that's predominantly helping women who are looking to make a career move, either lateral or upwards, but someone that's looking for change and they want that direction instead of just doing it from reaction.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. I think the first thing I wanted to ask you was, what are some of the common career roadblocks that you see women face, and how do you guide them through those challenges so that they feel more empowered?
I think a lot of my clients that come to me are typically, they're usually like 5+ years into their professional world. And, they've been doing something that they thought they should be doing. And as you probably know, a lot of us, especially in the South Asian culture, we're taught what we should want, not what we actually want often. So they've gone through school, they've got the stable job, they've moved up or moved laterally, but they're starting to feel like after about the 5+ years, they're starting to feel this restlessness. Sometimes it feels like they're being stuck. Sometimes it comes across as feeling burnt out. They're not able to just quite put their finger on it. And a lot of the times I find that women, when they're in that position, and we've all been through that, where you make a change because you're reacting to that feeling without really uncovering like what is the meaning behind all of this, like what are some deeper needs that you have in those moments. So what I do with my work is I have those conversations with them, help them uncover what are some needs that are not being met, what are some patterns that they've seen in their career currently that isn't like that aren't currently helping them feel like they have that purpose in the role that they're doing. So those are some of the main ones. The other thing that I find is a lot of the times when people come to me, they think that it's just, meeting with me and let's work on our resume, work on interview skills. I don't do that. If somebody needs help with that comes later, but I really invite them to really slow down and really reconnect with themselves to see what is it that I actually need. What are some of my values that are not aligned with the work that I'm doing? What are some of the desires that I have out of that career or the move that they're making going forward? And currently where they're at, what are some challenges that they're having with the current role where things don't feel aligned?
Okay, great. I think it'd be really valuable for you to share what your experience was like when you made that career move, like physically, mentally, emotionally, because I have a lot of clients who come to me and I think if they really heard from you what it felt like and what was your aha moment where you actually took that leap, like what was it? So, so just so other people feel empowered and they know, like, I can do this, right? Because Jyoti went through this.
Yeah, for sure. So I can I'll give two examples just to show the contrast. So I've done it at one point where I was in a role where I didn't seem to fit in with the culture of the organization, with the culture of the team. I was stressed out, quickly went on. I don't think it was LinkedIn at that time. It was before the LinkedIn days. Went online and applied to just any other job that seemed to kind of align with my qualifications. Applied to that. So that was a rushed, like reactive move. In contrast, I made another role change where I was in a role where, worked well with the team, everything else was going well, but I was feeling that internal need of I can do more, I want to do more. In that moment, I really worked with a coach, and this is where that coaching interest came from as well, to look at what are some of the things that I'm currently doing that I really do enjoy doing that I want to keep on, continuing to do in my future jobs. And what are some things that I don't like about my current job? What are some skills and some attributes that I have that aren't really being utilized in the current role? And then, even if I make the job or make the change, what are some potential training or other educational things that I need to put into my portfolio, my little package, so that makes me more marketable? So taking that purposeful approach of where am I at now? What are my needs? What are my values? And where do I want to see myself in the next 2 to 5 years? That helped me make a better decision. And I was in a role that sat well. And I can give additional examples as we continue to talk.
And just want to add onto that, you have helped me along the way to kind of make leaps and jumps in terms of my own career. Jyoti and I started off working together. That's how we met in healthcare. So, I think everything you say really resonates with me, and I hope it will with our audience, because like I said, like I have a lot of women who come to me who say, like, for example, like I'm a teacher, but I can't do this anymore. How can I do something else? Like, and then this one client of mine said, I really have an interest in film, and it's completely different than what I do now. So, it's really tough, but I think when you share real experiences of you doing it not once, but twice, that's amazing. Another question I have for you is, what do you say to that woman who's trying to make a change? She's not happy where she is, but she says to you, I don't have any skills. I don't have anything that I can do other than this job. Like, what would you say to that person?
Yeah, and there are times that I will have people that come, and especially that happens with people that are earlier, like that are closer to the 5-year mark, and they're looking to make a change, but still feeling that, what do I have to bring with me? So that's where we do that internal work of what are some of your strong skills. My approach is very strengths-based. I don't believe in making a change and then struggling, because that's when you'll look back and you'll think that you've made the wrong decision. But looking at what your strengths are. So for the example of what you're mentioning about the teacher, depending on what her interest is, there are so many transferable skills that a teacher will have that any organization will benefit from, especially in a role like organizational development, or there's an HR role that could closely align with someone that, working with, depending on what age they worked with, but working with children, you have a whole other level of patience that not everyone has easily. So sometimes it's the role of a coach is to be that mirror to really help you uncover what some of your strengths are. We all know them in the back of our head, but we're not, especially women, we're not boastful. So we don't sit there and sort of make a tally of I am this, but a coach can help you uncover that and be a partner.
Okay, wonderful. What do you feel being South Asian means to that woman who's, again, struggling with her career or really wanting a career, right? Because that happens a lot too. Like, I know in my career, like I was often told by family, by ex-in-laws that, you shouldn't be on media. It doesn't look good, so there's always a lot of limiting beliefs around women who are South Asian. What did that mean for you in the past? And what does it mean for you now?
Yeah, it's funny because my generation, women in my side of the family, none of them actually had a career. And some of them have changed since then. And a lot of them are more passion careers than anything else. But I come from a family, back in Surrey, from a family of builders, and a majority of the women in the family, not that they didn't have the education, many of them had their, at least a bachelor's or their master's. But due to dynamics and due to the work that their husbands were doing, they didn't pursue a career. So when they would see me, go back to school, sort of, upskill myself or push for a new role, a lot of the time it was met with, like, what, are you not happy? And it wasn't always just about happiness. Sometimes you want to feel more challenged. Sometimes you want to take on, extra risks. And so one was that I think there's a little bit of that judgment around, like, why is it that you're continuously pushing yourself? And then two, like you said, like being in media, putting yourself out there, or even showcasing to people all the different skill sets that you have, all the different things that you can do. My answer to that really is about, I genuinely believe that each of us on this earth, we have a purpose. And for me, especially sharing my story, similar to what you're doing, like you're doing the work that you're doing, that even if you help one person, it just makes it all worth it. So for me to be able to, use my experience, use the knowledge that I've gained, if I can make somebody else's that career transition, because at one of the times it took me like over 6 months to really figure out what I wanted. And this is when I, at the end, connected with a coach. But if I can take that from 6 months down to, like a month or less for you because of the tools and resources and the workbooks that I have, that person now isn't struggling for another half a year. They're able to make that decision sooner. So I just ground that back into like one of my core values is to be able to serve and help other people. And that usually resonates well. There's still some judgment. I think that's just a part of our culture, but hopefully our generation and the future generations can change that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it is also deep-rooted fears, right? Like I know I had that when I was making that decision of going from full-time hospital to private practice full-time. It took me years. Like you said, like if I had someone like you in my life at that point, I had hired a career coach, I probably could have done that transition in a much shorter time, but it took me years. But I mean, obviously given there was a lot of personal stressors at that point too, but I had these really deep-rooted fears because I kept thinking from a scarcity mindset, right? Like, what if I lose the benefits? What am I do without a pension? What am I going to do in private practice if I don't have clients? So, like it's really important in the work that you and I do that we really work with these women to help them, I think, tear down those limiting beliefs, right? And then just really get to the root of the fear and then empower them to know that you can do anything you want, really. Like, at the end of the day, it's about happiness, right?
Yeah. And, as you say about that fear and that scarcity mindset, another thing is that a lot of people think when they're reaching out to, and it could be a coach in your field or my field or any of the other fields, a true coach will never tell you what to do. Like they're going to help you figure that out yourself. So sometimes there is that fear of, if I speak with somebody, even to uncover what it is that I need or what are some of my needs that are not being met currently in my current role. A coach's role is not to ask you or tell you to change. If you come to that, that's one thing. But there are times, like I've had some clients where they've come to me thinking, I'm just feeling whatever it is that they're feeling in the moment, and I'm looking for a change. And throughout our conversation, it wasn't that they needed a change. It was just that they needed to set those boundaries for themselves. Because again, like a part of it is culture, a part of it is being women. We're not very good at automatically setting boundaries. So sometimes a coach can help you just redefine what that current job looks like. It may not even be a change at the end.
Yeah, great point. I totally agree because you're right. Like, you shouldn't be being told what to do. You should be, as a good coach, you're going to be really reflecting and pulling that out of that person, right? Which is what they need. That's why you're going for guidance and support. So yeah, I love that. What do you think it means? Or not means, but like maybe empower us with a story of one of your clients that went through transformation with your help.
Yeah. So again, like I get people from various parts of their journey. So I've had people who are earlier in their career, but there's this one specific individual who'd been working for over 15 years in the role that she was in. She was now in a very senior position in her company. But when she came to me, like this person, as we had that initial conversation, like she wasn't even smiling as she's talking about her work. And that's when, like there's that deep disconnect between what she wanted and what she's actually getting out of that work. And what was also difficult when we go back to that societal pressure, anybody outside of sort of maybe her core group would see her as somebody that's very successful, somebody that's making a lot of money and somebody that's, that true vision of what others inspired to be, but she herself wasn't feeling happy. So again, like doing that work of what is it that you're feeling uncomfortable with? What are some needs that are not being met? And like creating that room, like that safe room for reflection. And this individual, what they were feeling was that they'd made that shift initially, like when they were growing in their career, with a very role and title based approach. And one of their true innate values was similar to mine, where it's about service. It's about getting the joy that you get from helping others. So instead of being, a professional, and I'm trying very hard not to use names or roles, but really, like one of their main things was that they wanted to support other people and help them grow. It didn't mean necessarily that they needed to leave the company. They just needed to move into another role within that company, which was readily available. But the trust factor was important. So what she didn't know at that moment was about whether or not she could trust people at her company about the conversations that she needed to have about making this change. So again, doing that work. And again, these things aren't, one conversation and done. At times it can take a lot longer. But taking that time up front allows people to really be more comfortable with that decision. In the end, like her first instinct when she came to me was about, I'm quitting and I'm just, what she said, her words were, I'm going to go off and open up my own consulting company and this is what I'll do, which may have been one very amazing approach. But the other reality of things, and I really try to stay realistic, especially when coaching some of the younger people, is that you could go off and start your own business, become an entrepreneur, but there is going to be a period when you may not have that financial support that you need to be able to do that. So doing that assessment, if you do that up front, to be able to see, will my bills be paid? If you have a mortgage, will that be paid? So once you do all of that, even if you do make that shift from working for a corporation to building your own business, you can feel a lot more supported. And this individual actually ended up taking on a fractional role within the company that they were at, and then opening up their practice on the side. They're also a coach now. But so instead of just jumping into something new, she did the work to see what is more aligned with her values, with her needs, and then she made the change.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. What would you say to that woman? As we're talking, this came up in my head. You and I have both been through really crazy personal journeys, a lot of transformation, a lot of, trauma, a lot of chaos, whatever, but we're both in better places now. But I guess what I want to ask you is, what would you say to that woman who is going through a struggling period of her life? Maybe there's unhealthy relationships, maybe there's some trauma, maybe it's just, they're just unhappy, but they also want a career change, but they don't know how to balance. So I guess the question would be more around like, how did you incorporate into your own life when you're going through your personal journey, healing, self-care, transformation, all that good stuff, but also focus on career? Like, because it's really hard to balance, especially when you have kids.
Yeah. And that's where a coach is able to help. That's where, someone like yourself, because there's the therapy part of things, which coaches are not therapists. We're not licensed to provide the level of therapy that you're able to provide and the transformation that you can help people with. But this is where you take that inventory of what isn't working, what is working, what needs to change. And in my case, I'll use my example because sometimes I think it's helpful for people to hear like what people have gone through. When I got divorced, this is back in 2013, I had just started going back to school. And I think that may have been one of the catalysts in whatever was happening on the personal end. But I just started going back to school. I was taking courses for another undergrad on a part-time basis. And all of a sudden, my life I didn't have control over how things were going to pan out. And there I was. I had a 4-year-old. I was on my own. My entire family was out in BC. And I really, and I did go for counseling at that point. But what self-reflection I did at that time that I think really served me well was I have a couple of choices. One is that I could just stop, which in some cases people may need to do that. And, we all need to honor that. But in my case, I'm somebody that I do better when I'm busy. So my other option was I could apply myself, at my work as well as in my classes that I'm doing then, so that I don't even leave room for myself to be, sulking for too long. I still, went in for my therapy, went in for my conversations, but what I didn't want was long periods of free time, not having a lot of, family around and a lot of friends at that point, because we're still trying to, along with the rest of the divorce, we're still trying to figure out which friends go to him, which friends stayed with me. But so I really focused on that. So I channeled my energy towards building myself up, because I knew, and I forget, and maybe it's Lady Gaga, but someone had said that quote about, like, no one can take away your education. Everything else can be taken away. So that's one thing. Another thing is like really looking at your support circle. So at the beginning of this, I said I didn't have a lot of family around, but people show up when you call on them. And especially if it's a woman who's going through, that part of their journey, maybe there's a separation, maybe there's something like that that's going on. Lean on people that you trust, lean on people that have supported you in the past, and ask for that help, because people do show up. I had my nieces who would come in and they would look after my daughter if I had a big exam, so that I could actually study for my exam and then go do my exam. So again, you need to build your community. You need to have those people around you that can support you with it. But at times, having that transition can actually help you cope with that other emotional journey that you're going through, because you have something to look forward to that you're working towards. That's all yours.
Yeah, I love that. And as you were saying that, I wanted to add in that you were that one of the support persons that I had in my life, right? Like you were part of that community. So I totally resonate with that. And I agree with that, because that is huge when you're making any change in life, right? Any shift, and you want to just live a better life. But like you said, you need a really strong support circle of people that you trust. And so, yeah, thank you for being there for me.
Praise.
So just kind of going into now more of what it looks like when people work with you. So walk us through, like if I'm a client, I call you, I do a consultation with you, and now I'm ready. I'm ready to start my career coaching with you. What am I expecting in my first session with you? What's it going to look like? Because I know sometimes people are really nervous, right, to take that step. And yeah, so just walk us through, like, what is it going to look like in that first session?
Yeah. So what I was mentioning, Angie, was that a lot of my work is around values and everyone's strengths. We all come with different strengths. Even people that don't think they have any strengths, as we start doing the work, they're the ones that'll list out their strengths with me. So I start with the values that, that are their top values that they have. Out of those, what are the top 3 to 5 values that they cannot compromise no matter what? Looking at that, then checking in with their current work and how those values are being met or not met, and then what that role could look like in the future. The second one is their strengths. So really, doing an inventory of what their strengths are. Some of them, it's funny because people only recognize them in the conversations that we're having. So having that inventory, then again, going back and seeing what strengths are being utilized, which strengths are not being utilized, and where would they also like to build strengths? Because with these transitions, you can also explore other parts of yourself that you might not have. And another is the life phase, like you mentioned. There are times that you can take on bigger change. There are other times that you want a little bit more of a slow-paced change, so that change isn't so abrupt that it's impacting you negatively in other areas of your life. And then, how will you feel aligned with your purpose? Like, what is your purpose that you're feeling that you need to serve through your work? Because at times we can feel that our work is so far removed from our purpose that starts to create that disconnect, that restlessness that people see. So using that approach, by the end of it, there are multiple roles that'll come up that people might want to apply for. And then depending on how long they want the interaction for. So sometimes the engagements are, they'll have that initial call and we'll do a few calls to just uncover this and then off they go. My goal is never to have a lifelong client, because I want my clients to come in, work with me for a little bit and then go off, and, the one-off calls here and there that they may book. But there are some times where people want more of, like, I want a 3-month engagement where I want to have that conversation with you on a regular basis until I've made that change. So in those cases, we'll look at the resume, we'll look at the cover letter, the interview preps. And again, throughout this process, even when they're selecting companies that they're applying to, having that conversation about how does this align with what it is that you want to do going forward, not what everybody else has decided for you.
Okay, cool. That's great. And you did say that you can do up to 3 month commitment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I do not book anything longer than 3 months, even if somebody's asking. Again, I'm always available, but what I find is I don't want to be a crutch for someone. I think everybody has that ability to be able to pursue things on their own with the addition that support up front. So we'll do 3 months max at a time, and then after that, if they'd like to reconnect and go further, we'll do another 3 months if needed. But I'm also good with one-offs.
Great. So tell our guests where they can find you, and if you wanted to share, anything new and upcoming, or if there's any offerings you have, feel free to do that now.
I will. Thank you. So you could find me on LinkedIn at Jyoti Pannu. You could find me on Instagram at Jyoti K Pannu. And my email is also Jyoti K Pannu. So it's JYOTIKPANNU at gmail.com. And my website is jyotipannu.com. And in terms of resources, so everything that I've talked about, especially the process. So I do have a workbook that I'm just finalizing just the visuals of it. So it'll be ready in the next couple of days. But I have this free workbook that what I want people to have is access to these things without really having to pay. Because at times, especially if you're going through a transition where maybe it is a big personal life change that's being made, you want to have some resources that you're able to be able to lean on. So I will share the link for that with you so that you can share that with your clients.
Wonderful. And I will obviously list all of Jyoti's socials on this episode so that you can find her, check out her website, obviously look for that new workbook. That's going to be amazing. I think that's a great resource that you're sharing with everyone. Before we end today, what is one thing or one piece of advice that you can share with our audience in terms of, I guess, like over your transformational journey? If you were to look back at the younger Jyoti and who you are now, what's one piece of advice that you would give our audience or any other woman right now who's trying to create that change for themselves in their life?
That's an interesting question. I think taking your time at the onset. I have, as I shared at the beginning, I have made some career changes that were more reactive than purposeful. I was never happy with those changes. There was always something missing still. So taking the time up front, this workbook will be a great resource, but really doing your research, that internal research, as well as, the company in the field, but really do about yourself, about what it is that you want, what it is that's important to you, about your values, about your strengths. Because once you do that and then you apply for a change, you're able to align yourself so much better with it, and you'll be so much happier in the new role. Otherwise, it'll feel rushed. It'll feel rushed, as well as it's not going to give that contentment that you're looking for out of a change.
Yeah, amazing. Love that. Thank you so much for being here. I will add like I said, I'll add all your social handles onto this episode. But for anyone who's watching right now, please follow, support, because these are, amazing speakers, guests who actually have such amazing and powerful transformative journeys. And I'm so happy to have you here today and be able to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.